Hello.
Robert, fantastic.
Finally, sorry, man. I think I've been getting everything wrong. So let me switch on my video. I'm gonna remove my virtual. Okay. Yep, I think I'm good to go.
There we go.
Yeah, awesome.
Excellent. In that case, I will now admit the participants. So, like I say, we'll give everyone a minute or so to settle in. Once we've got a decent body of people, we can it can hand straight over to you, Wilfred. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Just give me my cue whenever we are good to go.
Okay, I'll say over to you, Wilfred.
Yeah.
Oh, and Wilfred, just a reminder about Beatrice. We do need to give an apology on her behalf also.
Okay. Was her bio in the list?
It's in the banner.
Okay. So even with Tony, you want me? I should give apologies as well, huh?
Yes, and I can also do it too, but I think it's better coming from you as the moderator. And then we all have the ability for sharing screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, Wilfred, over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to first introduce myself, but also welcome you to this amazing event that we've all been waiting for. So by introduction, my name is Wilfred Njagi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Will Grow Africa, where I work alongside Robert and an amazing team that we've built over the last 5 years. So a little bit about today's event. I think we've all seen how COVID has been ravaging our lives, and we've seen the suffering and the pain that the whole world has been experiencing. And it's with our backdrop that we are coming together today. First, to celebrate the ingenious that we've seen from some of the local entrepreneurs and innovators that have been able to step up to the plate, be it in terms of producing locally made ventilators, testing kits, PPEs, but as much as we are celebrating that, we also see and we are also cognizant that there is a gap, right? That path to scale and commercialize healthcare innovations is not clear or is not so obvious for most aspiring inventors. And that is why ViewGrow has come together with the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, the Coalition for Health Research and Development, to come together and build this Innovators Forum. And today marks the first of 5 such online events. We'll be bringing together diverse groups of experts from industry, from business, from academia, from policy, all coming together to support a knowledge-based development process that will lead to commercialization of healthcare innovations. We'll also be having 3 interactive roundtables in between these 5 online events. And these events are running over the span of 1.5 months from this first event. And my co-founder, Robert, will be speaking more about those shortly. Then also to let you know that you should be looking out for a publication that will come at the end of the 5 webinar series. We intend to publish a guide or a toolkit to accelerating biomedical and diagnostic innovation and manufacturing. So what should we expect today, or why are we coming together today? One is to share and promote innovation policy, and that's why we have government represented in this panel. We'll also be sharing and promoting cutting-edge academic research, and we'll see a lot of representation from academia in the panel and also in the attendees. But also we intend to also come together and put together a platform where outside these events, you can network, connect with other attendees and participants. As you noticed during the registration of this event, you are taken through a BOBAB platform. And that's a networking platform that we intend to use to continue these discussions, even post-events. We'll also be hearing from some inventors here in this panel and other innovators that have gone through this less trodden path, and they'll be sharing their success stories and learnings, hopefully to inspire other aspiring innovators. So without taking too much time, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Robert Karanja, who also happens to be my predecessor in the CEO role of Vucro Africa. And he also wears the hat of Chief Research Officer at Vucro Africa. Robert is a scientist and a development entrepreneur who has been working at the interface of science, industry, and venture capital over the last 18 years. He also spent some time at Cambridge, where he initiated some of the entrepreneurial ventures with the aim to support a local vibrant bioeconomy. Some of his initiatives while at Cambridge were development of a pilot manufacturing R&D facility for nutraceuticals. He also ended up designing a multidisciplinary course called Bioentrepreneurship. And after this, he went on to start his entrepreneurial journey, becoming the co-founder of the first African genomics company called the African Genomics Center and Consulting Limited, TAGCC. At the same time, he also helped co-found Vucro Africa. That was around 2015. Something else I'll tell you about Robert, it's it's not easy driving around this city with Robert, just because most of the time he'll be sharing. He's very passionate about this forum to address the gap of local innovation. And whenever I've enjoyed some rides with him, and all he talks about is how can we fill this gap? Often we see infrastructure coming up, and the first thing that Robert says is, why are we setting up ourselves as a supermarket for imports? Why are we not, as we build infrastructure, can we think local? Can we think local production? Can we think export? Those are some of the things that Robert is passionate about. So without much further ado, Robert, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Wilfred. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to just say a few words about Innovators Forum. First, let me start with an apology from our chief guest, and this is Dr. Tony Omwansa, the CEO of Kenya National Innovation Agency. Something did come up at the very, very last minute, and he, let me know today morning he may not be able to make it. And unfortunately, that has ended up being a correct assessment of the situation. So I will be holding brief for Dr. Tony in some of my opening remarks, but he's very much with us. He's excited and as passionate about this as I am, since we both have that same background of coming from academia and speaking to the broader space of innovation and how do we translate research to impact through entrepreneurship. I want to share my slides, and As I do that, I wanted to share my screen. As I do that, I think we will be able to, I'll be able to do two things. The first one is to take you through what it is that we are doing Innovators Forum for, and the next part is a bit of reiterating what Wilfred has already shared. How do we make this a national discourse? How do we plug in, and how do we then move it forward to actual impact? I'm trying to find a way of, so this is the first way of you knowing that I really am not a techie, but I do love my science. So here we are. So Innovators Forum, as you can see, we have this tagline about driving innovation and industrialization in Africa. And the key thing we're trying to understand is how do we bring about investment in the biomedical devices and diagnostic space by being able to nurture and promote local innovation, homegrown solutions, and local manufacturing right here in Kenya. A little bit about Vilgro, just so that you understand where we are coming from, and not just my background as a scientist. So we've been around from 2015, which is now 6 years. We started operating in March of 2015. And over that space, we've been able to support more than 21 companies. We actually created a new portfolio of companies last year, speaking towards COVID-related innovations. So now about over 30 companies. We've seen the startups that we're working with grow and show traction in the marketplace. We've created more than 3,000 jobs through partnering with these startups. We typically invest as a business incubator. We are also an early stage investment platform, and we've been able to invest about $1 million or 100 million shillings, both in catalytic funding. And this is usually either grant or equity type kind of investments. And we tend to do so as we're usually the first institutional investor for most of these startups. And we've been able to see our technical support and that seed capital be able to unlock more than 1.8 billion Kenya shillings coming to this country, coming to this region to take these startups and these innovations to the next step, and seeing them demonstrate real traction in terms of revenue, more than 200 million shillings worth of revenues and counting. So we understand what can technology do. We love the science, but we also love the translation of that science into viable companies and being able to bring on board our family of venture capital investors that are able to work alongside us and innovation funders. The reason for Innovators Forum is we do focus primarily in health and life sciences. We're really about the bioeconomy. And we've discovered that we do need to have a networking platform that can bring together various actors. And we've done quite a bit of work to understand that medical devices and diagnostics is one of those potential areas that can actually grow in a big way, where it's not just about the innovators, but also understanding the ecosystem. And this is where we talk about the triple helix. How do we get government, academia, and private sector to basically read off the same page? And as Wilfred has rightly said, we've been very grateful to partner, especially the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade, and Enterprise Development, to help us to understand how do we go about this. So a lot of times people ask me, so who is Innovators Forum? And the best way to describe it is to say that we are basically a loose coalition of very many players. You can see Ministry of Industrialization, our key touch point within government, and also the Kenya National Innovation Agency, another key touch point within the government. We also have intermediary organizations like the Coalition for Health, Research and Development, CREED, Gearbox, that is an amazing makerspace concern worldwide that has been partnering with various stakeholders in this ecosystem, and also academia, University of Nairobi, KU, JKUAT, and even the University of Washington, Department of Global Health have all been interested and active stakeholders that have been collaborating with us in brainstorming and thinking. And we've done several forums from 2017 to date, where we regularly would try to come together, touch base, ask, so what's happening, what's working, what's not working, listening to investors, listening to entrepreneurs, innovators, listening to the policy makers, and trying to make sense of it all. And some of this has also resulted in publications. We've done reports, we've done white papers, we've done peer-reviewed journals, trying to bring together what the learnings are. And for example, what exactly are the key barriers to biotech innovation? How can we replicate the success we see in the fintech space within the biotech, within the bioeconomy? And that's not for me to go into today, but really to bring us back to the solutions, because after all is said and done, highlighting challenges does not move the needle in any way if we don't understand how do we then now move forward. And as I keep saying, Innovators Forum is really about the ecosystem. It's creating a living, breathing triple helix play, where academia will always be able to tell us what is the technical solution to the problem we're facing. Is it COVID? Whatever it is, what's the technical solution? Private sector is able to then understand how do we translate that solution and make it available, whether it's at the pharmacy or it's in the hospital, or at the home or in the household, so that we actually solve the problem. And government, as you know, is always critical in terms of setting the agenda, creating that enabling environment. And when we're able to work together, we're able to co-create the industry, we're able to then see the translation of the potential of technology in terms of creating jobs and creating wealth and the social impact, especially, that we need to see. And that is the reason why the work and the vision that we have as the Innovators Forum is really anchored on the local content policy, which in itself is really bringing together the national industrialization policy, the Big Four agenda, Kenya Vision 2030, which is the economic blueprint of this country. And just to highlight three key things about what the local content policy does. Number one, it provides a framework for promoting R&D. It also promotes enterprise development, and lastly, enabling a good business environment. And within that context, the big question then becomes, why then do we talk about medical devices and diagnostics industrial cluster? From the research perspective, all I would need to highlight is two things. The first one is Africa has been investing a lot more in terms of R&D. Most of this happening within the research institutes and the universities. A quick point is that in the 10-year space of 2002 to 2011, we can actually see the scientific output measured in terms of publications doubled for Kenya, for East Africa. And Kenya being the blue color there, we then ask, so what exactly is the research that we're doing? And the key thing I want you to take away is that the number one area of research, the number one area of publications coming from Kenya is in immunology. And hence there is the focus on diagnostics. Then the second thing is also understanding what are the market dynamics. And here you can see quickly that we have a huge market size in Africa. In 2015, when we were starting our work at Bilbro, the market size for medical devices was roughly about 1.4 billion. This has been projected to reach 7 billion, 7 billion plus, but in 2 years' time. And so that dynamic is a key factor for investment in this space. And then the third one is understanding how the startup economy works and where we're located as a country. And Kenya is one of those leading hubs for startups. I think in 2019, where this report is coming from, you can see we had $2.02 billion coming into investments in startups in Africa. We usually talk about most of these investments happening in the Big Four, those countries that you can see with the orange color. Kenya is typically number one or two within those Big Four. 2019, that meant an investment of about $564 million, more than $500 million coming to this country, specifically for startups. Last year, with the COVID hangover and the doom and gloom, it did cast a shadow, but we still managed to do $300 million plus of investments to startups. So we have a lot of things going for us as an ecosystem. The challenge, though, is that when it comes to the bioeconomy, we invest a lot in immunology, we invest a lot in life sciences, but you can see, where does this $500 million plus go? Where does the $300 million plus go? It doesn't come to the bioeconomy. There's a disconnect between what we are doing in academia and what we are doing in the private sector. And where the money tends to go is energy and fintech. So the question is, how can we, as the Innovators Forum, this community of innovation actors and investors and policymakers, how can we have a better alignment between the R&D investment? And I think this is the discussion that we're going to be kickstarting today, and I'm really also eagerly awaiting to listen to our star panel of speakers. And after that, we'll also be having follow-on roundtable discussions. We want to look at a specific case study of what's happening with especially ventilators development in Kenya. We will be hearing from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers on their experience in terms of building a ventilator and understanding how far has this gone, what do we need to do to take it all the way until they're available in the hospitals. We also want to understand the market perspective a little bit better. How can we ensure that our public health sector is able to take its rightful place as a market mover? How can we stop being a net importer of health technologies, even where there is local capacity and actually export of the same health technologies to our neighboring countries, but we're not necessarily seeing our public health sector supporting the manufacturing sector. And then lastly, also understanding, how do we fund innovation? How do we bring together what it takes in terms of developing an industrial cluster, and specifically not looking just to government, but understanding how do we leverage private sector investment. And we will be having a specific discussion around results-based financing and how we can be able to do this. So we want to welcome you to the Innovators Forum. We want you to feel at home and ask you to be members. Feel free to contribute. As Wilfred had mentioned, we actually not just having a talk shop, but we actually want to have forward progress. We want to have everybody's voice being able to weigh in this conversation. I want to really encourage and invite you to register on the BOBA platform. It's really just an opportunity for you to, number one, identify yourself. What is the role that you're doing within the ecosystem? What is it that you're able to provide in terms of services? We want to see deals happening. We want to see interactions. We want to see money changing hands as innovations are moving from one step to the next. And basically to have a space where, whether you're in the government side, whether it is the procurement that we're talking of Ministry of Health, or whether it is the regulatory arms, or if you are in the university, or if you are an investor looking for where can I find the next big thing, that we'll be able to all converge within the Innovators Forum and to leverage the platform at BOBAP to be able to enable us to do that. So with those few remarks, I want to say thank you so much, welcoming you once more to the Innovators Forum. And at this point, I'll just hand it over back to you, Wilfred, to guide us through the discussion for the day.
Thank you, Robert. As I do so, I would like Nick, if you can help us share. We have a hashtag that we are using today so that we make this thing go viral. I think it's on the next slide. Is it? Oh, okay, there. Okay, thanks. So these are, you can tag Creed at Creed Kenya, as you can see there. You can tag BOBAB, Kenya updates. You can also tag Kenya Association of Manufacturers. It's at KAM Kenya. And then you can also tag Gearbox K at Gearbox KE. The hashtag for the event is Innovators Forum KE at the top there, at the top of the banner. So let's make this important discussion, let's amplify it, take it a notch higher so that people can know what we are up to. Thank you. So I would like Robert to have a little bit of a discourse, and I have some questions that I would like you to respond to, just as a reaction to your presentation. I was reading last week an article that was forwarded about the establishment of the US Council on Innovation and Competitiveness. And I read that the council is calling for an increase of national innovativeness by tenfold. And this is being created or headed at the White House. And we're talking about an already developed economy like the US, saying we can go a notch higher by 10 times. So how much more should we be doing in this side of the world as a developing and upcoming country? And what are similar initiatives like Innovators Forum and other initiatives by Kenya that you know of to foster innovation locally?
Thank you. And I think we draw a lot of inspiration from the US, of course. They tend to be world beaters when it comes to innovation. But I think let me put it this way, let them bring it on. I really believe we have a better chance and lots of room for growth as an innovative country in Kenya. And the reason I think that Kenya is uniquely positioned to beat even countries like the US is that we are a bigger part of the market. As you saw when I looked at in the slide for the medical devices market size, that growth from 1 billion to 7 billion from 2015 to 2023, that can only happen in the developing world. Now, the innovation that happens in places like US and Europe, and I'm not knocking them, but the reality is that they understand a marketplace that pays premium for products and for innovation. Ours, we know that our purchasing power is not as good. And so it's about frugal innovation and understanding not just how to do frugal engineering and coming up with solutions that can provide, can do more for less at a fraction of the cost. We have that product market understanding that nobody else can really beat us at, because this is our market, this is where we operate, and we know how to get the pricing right. We know how to ensure that even the channels to market and the business model are all frugal and meant for the bottom of the economic pyramid. So to me, my thinking is, yes, the US is very competitive, and I'm not surprised that they are investing even more on being competitive. But my bet and where I'd place my money would really be in the innovative capacity of countries like Kenya. And actually just the partnerships that also we're able to talk about in terms of the startup ecosystem now beginning to network better with the government, because that's happening. That's happening with the Kenya National Innovation Agency. That's happening with the Ministry of Industrialization under the KIEP program. And I can see the linkages and the synergies that we've not had, even when we are counted as a big four. We've never really had the synergies of government and private sector and the startup economy. But now, as these things are coming on board, I see us being even better positioned to really go out and to capture this market. So that is my perspective, and I think there's enough traction to demonstrate that really it's not talk. We really have a lot going for us when we're living in exciting times.
Yeah, so sounds like from 2 billion to 7 billion. Are you saying that 1 billion can be divided amongst the innovators who are attending this forum? Yeah. So,
absolutely.
absolutely. And we'll be taking this discussion even offline. So continue following this on the Boba platform, but also on our social media handles. I'm being notified that time is not on our side. So maybe the last question for you, Robert, before I usher the next innovator is, when you spoke about the R&D outputs versus commercialization of innovations, I mean, the question that came to mind was, we saw the last year a lot of investment going into healthcare R&D globally. And that's how we have ended up with vaccines and other developments. But why didn't we see a share of that coming to local homegrown innovations in Africa? You say that there was a bit of shrinking of the total investment that we attracted last year. So why that disparity, if you may?
Two quick reasons. I think the financial markets were just jittery, and even the venture capital, private equity are part of that. And then the second thing is, I think we have this fear of, in Kenya, we always think big, and I love that about us. But we fear starting small, because when you're small, investing in a tiny startup of 2-3 brilliant engineers or scientists that are saying they have the solution, it sounds super risky. But I think we are now getting to that level of maturity where there's so much support mechanisms, so many enterprise support organizations like Billgrew and others that are being able to create a mechanism for de-risking and linking these small startups to capital. So we are on the right trajectory. That's a good news. But we do need to appreciate for some of these solutions, the thinking that you find within academia, we don't have an industry on the ground. So we're going to have to start really, really small and then scale. In some cases, and I think today I'm looking forward to hearing from Revital, from Ronique, we do actually have even people that can license solutions, and that is now already beginning to happen. But for some areas, we just need to be able to appreciate. We can't run away from starting small, but I also say staying small is inexcusable. We are in the prime real estate for startup investment in Africa. And so let's see how can we leverage the momentum, the forward momentum that the ecosystem has, and actually make it work for the bioeconomy.
Thanks a lot, Robert. I like the excitement you have around this. And those who have questions for Robert, you can put them in the chat. We'll have a little bit of time at the end to do a bit of Q&A. So keep your questions coming on the chat. I'd like to switch gears quickly and then usher the next speaker. I think today we are very lucky that we have government represented. It's not very often that we enter into such forums and we have government and we have private sector and we have academia all coming together. So I would like to introduce Julius Kerema. Julius is a director in charge of industries, chemical and mineral industries within the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry and mathematics and a master's degree in entrepreneurship from JKUAT. He's also currently doing his PhD, soon to complete. He successfully served as a coordinator for Kenya Trade and Poverty Program, KTPP, whose objectives were to champion trade as a tool for development and fighting poverty. That was from the year 2005 to 2007. He also then chaired and convened the technical committee, which drafted the anti-counterfeit bill in 2008, and engaged the stakeholders, including members of parliament, for its validation, debate, and enactment. He was subsequently assigned to operationalize the anti-counterfeit agency, and he served as the first acting director, executive director of that agency. He also served as a member of the high-level task force that negotiated the East Africa Community Common Market Protocol and prepared the EAC Common Industrialization Policy and the ESC anti-counterfeit policy. He's also a registered lead expert on environment impact assessment and environmental audit. So without taking so much time, I would like to usher Julius Kirima. Please welcome and give us your welcome address.
Thank you, friend Jagi, Robert Kalanja, Daktari, my friend here, the chairman, Kam, Wanamuchai, Nick. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You can hear me?
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you.
Good afternoon.
This is indeed an opportunity for us to engage and talk matters innovation. Colleagues, I want to present on the subject local content policy and the quest for industrialization. And then in our discussion, we will find out what space we have to ensure that our innovations, our Innovators Forum gives us a scope for us to generate ideas that we push all the way to the market. You will find that we are in a scenario where even as we look at the Big Four agenda for the government, where universal health care is one of them. And the right to health is guaranteed in our constitution. And the government is determined to ensure that all Kenyans have access to highest attainable standards of health. We are still grappling with realizing that. And the situation recently got compounded with the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, which virtually collapsed the whole infrastructure, the supply chains for everything we have been doing. This then made us look vulnerable. As of now, we are talking about vaccinations, but we are queuing because these vaccines are not locally being made. They are being produced out there, and we have to wait for those who are manufacturing them to serve themselves first. So as I talk the message of local content, it will then be demystified, because the reality is that most Kenyans are now convinced that you are safer, you are more assured of what is available next door, as opposed to when we rely on imports for our essential supplies. So we find ourselves that in this scenario of COVID, we are now, even as a country, looking at how we can secure our strategic sector like health to ensure that we move towards self-sufficiency, even for such products. So we are talking about the challenge of keeping down costs, and Kenya, like many other African nations, considers health care for our people as a strategic issue to be addressed. And the government is determined to strengthen local production of affordable quality medicine and devices. However, we find ourselves still importing machinery, packaging, active pharmaceutical ingredients. And because of the scenario we are in, the cost of this has been going up, making it increasingly costly to fulfill that commitment of universal health care. But we found that we had also lessons to learn within this period. We have learned that by coming together, we have been able to put our resources to bring forward our best thoughts in addressing a common problem. Recently, the government approved the local content policy for publishing and implementation with a view to harnessing Kenya's resources, both material and human, to maximize in-country value addition and retention. The policy advocates for according preference to locally made goods and services, and currently the public sector is required to champion this cause through its public procurement programs. There's a requirement for all public entities to post quarterly reports demonstrating that they have expended at least 40% of their procurement budgets in procuring locally made goods and services. So our State Department has been a recipient of this report and analyzes them on the, to expose the level of compliance. As part of our mandate to grow industry, we have also been talking to industry. And there was a clear demonstration of a mismatch between the skills development in academia and the requirements of industry, causing us to create interest in seeking ways and means of forging and strengthening industry-academia collaboration. So the Innovators Forum, to us, we look at it as one such platform where we can create room for our researchers, for academia, to put forward their best thoughts. And then together with the industry, we'll be seeking to find a way of realizing the fruition of these good ideas. You will note that industrialized nations have created mechanisms and policies that synchronize industrial and academic interests. And their school systems aim at nurturing critical thinking skills. You don't just take a student through studies modules for the purposes of graduating them. They deliberately seek to impart some skills that invoke in the students, that inculcate in them skills for creative thinking, analytical thinking, curiosity, to find solutions to problems that weigh down on society. So the Innovators Forum should be such a platform for creative minds to bring forward their best thoughts to be progressed to fruition. For instance, the School Science Congress, which used to be held traditionally from the local level to the district, culminating in the finals at the national level. The national level should not have ended at an anticlimax where there was no continuity. Instead, the best ideas at that national level should have been progressed to the next level of actualization. I hope this is what in the Innovators Forum we are seeking to do, to bridge the gap between the sources of good ideas and the rest of the infrastructure, be it financial, that is required to make sure that those ideas are realized. So in this manner, Academia will be expected to vacate their patch of theoretical concepts and put their hands on industry. Academia will be very much interested. This country, for example, is grappling with unemployment. An institution that trains should be concerned to find out what becomes the fate of their students. So that at the very time the country is looking for skills, it will be clear that what is being developed by academia are those skills. And that way you find that the students will no longer be job seekers, but more often than not, they will come out as the experts that the industry find useful and engages them immediately, or they themselves become the investors pursuing their ideas, which also come out with the projects and the products. On the other hand, you will find the industry more interested in attaching the students in this collaboration and creating space for prototyping, even as a way of fast-tracking commercialization of research.
Sorry to interrupt. That's a 2-minute warning now. Thank you.
Yes. We have pledged to continue the government support that will cause domestic industry to reach out and work with the industry, with the academia. We are creating space for academia to find it also worthwhile to reach out to industry. And together, we want to have a situation where we are able to address our immediate needs and moving out to increase the share of our industrial merchandise. A case in point is during the outbreak of COVID, the country was in a panic mode as to how we would be able to provide enough PPEs, and working with the industry, including even SMEs or institutions like Kenya Bureau of Standards, we were able to reach out to assist in standards, certification, testing, which enabled many enterprises to immediately get into business and produce the right quality masks that were given. So in a scenario like that one, when we work together, we are able to put our resources, our expertise, and all what it takes to intervene for the country. It will be that kind of engagement that we look forward to seeing in the Innovators Forum that will spur local industry, that will spur local research and development institutions to want to contribute to addressing the needs that the communities and the country in general needs. I submit, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very, very wonderful. And I would like to quickly jump and follow up with some questions. I think you are spot on where you said that during COVID, we were able to see that power of coming together. And we saw the fast tracking that happened from CABs to other regulators, the standardization and regulation. I was doing my research and I saw that because of that disruption of supply chains, global supply chains, and us having to build our own, the trade deficit for the first time dropped by 205 billion. That means we reduced how much we were dependent on imports by 205 billion shillings. And so the question is, how do we keep that momentum going? How do we keep this fast tracking going? Because often we find most of the times that the government, especially the regulators, become almost a hindrance in terms of the process or the time it takes. If you need, for example, a device regulated or licensed, sometimes you have to grapple between 3-4 entities. So how do we streamline this and keep this momentum high that we continue reducing the trade deficit?
Thank you. Currently, as I've mentioned, we are implementing the local content policy and the various local content initiatives that aims at championing the cause for local industry, according preference for locally manufactured goods and services. This has expanded also local industry. It has incentivized local manufacturers to produce more, to acquire requisite technology and the capacity to produce quality merchandise, to beat down their cost of production to the extent that they are even able to export more than they used to. So we expect to keep this momentum with the public sector leading the way as the champion for the consumers of locally made goods and services. And eventually we will find out that even imports for those same merchandise that are locally available, Kenyans now will develop a taste for our own. And consuming more of what we produce, giving incentives for our industry to produce more and being competitive, they will definitely turn the tables to the extent that our balance of the trade will be favorable for the country. We will keep this momentum.
Thank you so much. And I'm very sure that some people are hearing about this for the first time, you know, the local content policy, the fact that 40% government procurement is required to consume at least 40% local. So this might be very new to most people attending and more your average Kenyan. So the question becomes, what are the forums like this or initiatives like this where people plug in and get to learn about these initiatives? Is there a resource somewhere, or is there events or a community of practice where these different players come together, innovators come together and speak about the challenges they are facing, and government on the other side speaks about the existing incentives? So are there such initiatives of knowledge sharing or information dissemination, especially with innovators and the rest of the public?
Yes, I want to indicate that our ministry's website is very informative. We try to load as much information as possible. In this forum, we have the chair of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, who is one of our key stakeholders. And we create even awareness campaigns. We engage the media. We try to roll out, for example, such initiatives that Kenyans get to know that there are these opportunities. These are programs within government. There is even access to government procurement programs, AGIPO, which has even special considerations for women, youth, and persons living with disabilities. There is ample communication to ensure that such information is accessible to the public. And such a forum, like where we are now, we own many like this. We have Africa Industrialization Day. The other day we were celebrating a World Intellectual Property Day. On 27th, we'll be celebrating Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises Day. These are forums during which we share information. We try to educate the Kenyans. We have media pull-outs. We have talk shows. So we try to disseminate information as much as possible.
Thank you. The last question, in the interest of time, is around, we've seen a lot of bilateral trades. You know, Kenya recently signed one with UK and other multilateral trade agreements like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. So as we talk about local manufacturing, how can Kenyan entrepreneurs, Kenyan innovators, Kenyan local manufacturers tap into some of these bilateral trades? Is there anything you'd advise them to be on the lookout for so that we are not just producing for ourselves, but for our neighboring countries in the continent, and also exporting to countries that we have bilateral trades with.
Thank you. As we do engage in bilateral trade negotiations and agreements and multilateral ones, the interest is to carry our supply side along. As we fight for market openings, we do the profiling of the destination markets and give such requirements, the taste and the preferences to our potential suppliers to ensure that they plug in with the full knowledge of what competition is and what the requirements are. We also deliberately undertake promotional campaigns to look for even investors from such countries and require them to engage with our counterparts within, even on joint ventures. Matchmaking. So there's a lot that we do together. We don't just engage in market openings because the interest is we carry the beneficiaries along. So Innovators forum will be a forum that can be clearly worked with so that they also benefit from our various market openings. We are now doing very well in the COMESA, EAC, COMESA, and the African Continental Free Trade Area is another opportunity for us even to engage the West Africa and the rest of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I would like to thank you for making time out of your busy schedule. And please pass our regards to Madam CS, Engineer Betty Maina, and tell her about this Innovators Forum. We would be happy to have her in the next one. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you.
God bless you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. So quickly moving on, I want to go to the next panelist. And if you have any questions for Julius, please make sure you put them on the chat. We will have a few minutes towards the end, and we'll see how that can be responded to. So the next person I'd like to introduce is none other than the current chairman of Kenya Association of Manufacturers. His name is Muchai Kunyiha. Muchai is the chairman of Kenya Association of Manufacturers and also the group managing director for Cooper K Brands, an animal health company in East and Central Africa. He also served previously as a CAMS vice chair, and he brings a wealth of experience in leadership, business, and strategy, with prior experience in agriculture, trading, and real estate. Besides his position in Cooper Kenya Brands, he also led Houghton Limited, a property development company, for the past 17 years. And he also serves as a chairman of Kenya Property Developers Association. Muchai also served as a non-executive director at the real estate company Econ Group for 8 years. He has been part of the Vision Delivery Secretariat Board, the team in charge of implementation of Kenya's Vision 2030. I would like, without much further ado, to welcome you, Muchai. Please take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to share with you on innovation. I'll give you a bit of a presentation, and just to say that what we have, I'm trying to bridge Kwa ground, what you'd call Kwa ground story, what is happening on the ground, with also policy side. Because what we have is a little bit of some of the experiences that we saw in the recent past, and what are the policy issues that we think are still running in this area. So firstly, an introduction of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. You can see some of our main stats there. So we are not very young. representing a lot of manufacturers across the sectors. So 14 different sectors, and 7 chapters are basically the locations we're in, which are mainly the big industrial manufacturing towns and areas in Kenya, from Mombasa, Machakos, Nairobi, Nakuru, Thika, Eldoret, and Kisumu. Those are the main chapters that we are in, where we actually have an office presence. We exist for 2 main things. We say one is we solve members' problems. This is fact-based advocacy. That's why, like my friend Bwana Kirima there, we meet a lot, because we are always bringing what issues our members are facing at different levels, whether it is licensing, taxation, etc. And we advocate for them. We also deal with what we call the future of manufacturing, and this is about being proactive, thinking not about just the programs and the policies that are being put in place or reacting to the ones that are coming from government, but thinking about what is going to happen next. And so something like this Innovators Forum sits very nicely in this space, where we are trying to say, how are we going to grow this manufacturing space? All our governments since 1963, whichever party has been in place or president, have always wanted to industrialize, but we've not been able to do it over all those years. So there's always this thing of, let's think through this and say, what are the solutions? What can we do going forward? Now, let's talk a little bit. It's on pharma and especially the biomedical devices and so on. But we in CAM, the sector that is there is called pharmaceutical, and I just put some headline facts there about what it is. It's quite large, 1.2 billion in size, but as you can see, and Bwana Kirima highlighted, there's a lot of importation. About 70% of that is importation in value. That's largely to do with the fact that, one, a lot of what is imported is also very high value, because some of the products that are, let's say, higher technologically sophisticated, with higher technological sophistication, tend to be imported. If we talk about your cancer treatments, they are your higher end drugs, so the value definitely goes up. But it's good to highlight also that we have a significant export market of about $100 million. We're exporting in the EAC, in the COMESA region, in the Africa region, and that's a big opportunity, like was mentioned earlier, that we have some opportunity for that. Now, these figures, just to be clear, are about drugs and medicines mostly. On the, let's call it the equipment and accessories part, which is part of our subsector, we don't have as much data, but I think the presenter after me will be able to maybe talk a little bit into that area. One I wanted to talk about was our ventilator that was set up within our the KKEM structures and teams during the crisis last year. Interestingly, this came in the automotive sector, and it was not unique in the world. Even elsewhere, you saw other car companies were actually the ones driving the ideas of new innovations in this thing, because I guess they do mechanical moving parts and so on. And there's an important bit there to note also, if you look at the teams, even as we work as an Innovators Forum, that it's a multidisciplinary team that is required to develop products. So the more multidisciplinary you can get, the better it will be, or the easier it is to produce something useful. So there was a team set up. They did our first model in about, we did in about 8 weeks to get to the first model. And then maybe 5, it took the 5 months. So it's 8 plus a couple more weeks to get to a KEBS prototype, which was tested and has actually now been licensed. And also importantly there to add is its continuing development, because you cannot make one model and then assume this is the one you're going to sell and sell forever. It is continuous, just like we have a new Samsung phone every other year. Similarly, you need, as you're innovating, you must keep developing the product as you go along. That was the initial prototype that they did. which you see, I guess the people who are more technically averse can tell you about the volume controls, the ambu bags and all that. That's not my area of expertise. But this is now 3.0 where they've developed. You can see it's a little bit more sophisticated even on the screens that is showing you the data and so on. Interestingly, theirs was also had a big battery backup, which is one of the points that we're talking about is how do you localize? Even as you create new products, you have to think about what is happening in our local markets on a day-to-day basis, because here we know power is a challenge. And so battery backup was a big part of this equipment. Like I said, I'm giving you very top line details on this because I was not actually part of the team. The others, you might have more detail on it. Now, that equipment has actually been licensed. It's been calibrated by KEBS and gotten a KEBS standardization mark, but still has some pending registrations, which are listed there. And I think as you'll see, I'm getting to what are the issues and recommendations. This is one of the big areas about how do we move things forward. So I'll just jump to that straight away and say on this regulatory framework. Now, what you find is actually that in Kenya, we do license a lot of things, and of course, they do need licensing. If you're making something like drugs or equipment that is going to be used on people, it's important for it to be safe and so on. The challenge is that our regulatory frameworks are built on the assumption that it is imported technology. There is very little framework for when you're trying to make something new for the first time. So they're expecting you to have either a certificate of free sale from somewhere else. Somebody else has tested this thing. We are not the first people to test it. So you find like even in this equipment, the ventilator, you want to do clinical trials. I'm not sure the delay is partly, okay, who's going to do the trials? Where do you do them? What is the trial protocol? Because we've never really had to do that. So one of the challenges, I think also on the regulatory side, how do we get this clear so that we know who is going to be licensing these things? And especially when it's new areas, we don't know, we've got to be able to respond quickly. And of course, there's a challenge there, which is related to the last point on the ease of doing business, of having very many bodies. So we have, like I noted in the previous one, you have the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, you have NACOSTI, you have KEBS, you have so many different bodies, and they may not be necessarily coordinating. Finance, I guess, is part of Vilgro's role. And obviously, all the work that has been done so far, the companies included in this have been having to finance from their pocket. So seed capital, venture capital, and especially capital that you're prepared to maybe lose, because as you test these things, some bits will work, some will not work. That could
Yeah, looks like we lost Mushai there. Oh, you're back. You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute. Still on mute.
Sorry, I don't know where I dropped off. I hope I haven't been on mute all that time.
No. I think your connection dropped off, but we had.
Sorry. What slide was I on?
Was talking about regulation, if I recall. Just go back.
Okay. So I was still on this slide, eh?
Yes.
Okay, so not too far away, not too long ago. Okay, sorry about that. So I think I talked about the regulatory. Hopefully I finished on that, just saying that we don't really have the framework for new products and new ideas. We get challenges around what, how we are going to license them and how we get them out there.
You had finished, almost finished this slide, yeah.
Okay, so then financing, and I'm saying we need to get people who are going to pay for the equipment. I think that's a real big challenge. I think we've heard about from Bonakirima about the AGPO and government buying local content and so on. But again, it's about whether you get paid and when you will get paid. So that is a big challenge. Getting markets for new innovations. And I think this is why you find there's bigger markets out of Kenya because people are prepared to buy new things and new ideas. So that tends to be a bit of a challenge. Of course, there are opportunities, and we've talked about them. PPE production has been going on well. Drugs and vaccines, we are talking about expanding how much we produce. I think the question will come up at some point about where we are not making COVID vaccines and so on. But part of the thing is how you need to collaborate with other global partners and bodies to be able to do this work. It's quite centralized, huge investment.
2-minute warning. Thank you.
Thanks. And then finally, what we do and specialize with at CAM is this general manufacturing issues, because it's not just about manufacturing of these biomedical devices and so on and pharma, but all manufacturing. What are the things that are affecting the ease of doing business and competitiveness? Some of the areas we've recognized are things like power cost, things like licensing, too many licenses, and even now they are getting more and more licenses and complication. We have issues with counties as well, the balance between counties and national government. So those are issues we are continually addressing as the association. And finally is the taxation policies. Do we have taxation that encourages investment, knowing that there will be a longer term return at a later date? At the moment, we find the taxman wants to take the first bite of everything we're getting. We've had problems like even minimum tax, because what would have happened if you set up a new factory, you're just starting to make something. In your first quarter, the government is expecting you to start paying them taxes, even before you started gotten going. So those are some of the issues we advocate for, and as to improve the general environment for manufacturing in Kenya. I think that's all I had, and I hope, yes, so over to you, Jaggi. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think your slides really elaborated the issue very well, and the challenges and recommendations. So that will save us some time. So I'll only ask one question because I'm told time is running. And the advantage we have of having is that you wear two hats, both from Cooper Kenya and also Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And as we all might know, I remember seeing Cooper from when I was a small child, when we kept cows and livestock at home, and we'd use your drugs. And the capacity in animal health in Kenya is tremendous, including vaccine manufacturing at Kevivapi. So the question is, why haven't we translated the same when it comes to human health? Are there lessons that have worked well in animal health that can be transferred to what we're talking about today, healthcare?
Okay, Wilfred, you're putting me in a hot seat. First, let's say the story from Kevivapi is mixed. So as we know, and the whole idea of making those vaccines, especially foot and mouth disease, was to wipe out the disease in Kenya, and we have not succeeded. Actually, Kevivapi has struggled in the recent past, and again, it goes to the funding side of it. The technology is there. They know what to do, I guess, and probably need to do some upgrading of their plants. Again, it goes to that point I raised. You cannot rely on old technology on what you did 20, 30 years ago. You need to keep upgrading to what is coming up next. But also being paid, because a lot of the time it's a national emergency. There's an outbreak of FMD somewhere. The ministry says, make some vaccine, send it to us. Whether you get paid for it or not is, that becomes a challenge. And it's gotten worse as we've gotten to counties, because the counties are supposed to be buying and paying for it. So it becomes a challenge for it. Now, obviously, the technology that is used to make these foot and mouth vaccines is about 60 years old. It's when it first came into place. It was started actually invented by one of our former directors, Dr. Capstick, late Dr. Capstick, back in the late 50s. And it's been applied globally, and I think it's still what is largely used. But when you start talking about things like mRNA and so on, this is the latest technology. So that becomes the challenge for us. There is a challenge in terms of also the size of the investment that you need to do. And for human as well, it is huge investments. We're talking about, I think I've seen some numbers like 200 million euros, because you need to both be able to develop the pathogen and whatnot, and then contain it. Usually when you make a sterile product, you make sure that the product going into the bottle is sterile. But in a vaccine factory, you also have to make sure that the product that doesn't get into the bottle doesn't get out either, because you don't want free-floating pathogens out there that leaked out of a factory. So it's quite an expensive setup. And even globally, you'll find that it is only a few countries that are actually making vaccine even today with a large size and so on. But there are still some opportunities. And I think right now that we're looking at the fill and package option, where the better part of the technology comes already done. You just kind of mix and fill at the end. You do the finishing of the vaccine, which would be one step towards that direction. Again, like Robert said earlier, I think we shouldn't be afraid of starting small, doing small steps, and then we will get there eventually if we set up the right things. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you've summarized that quite well. I'm hearing investment is needed. I'm hearing procurement process needs to be streamlined. Even as we talk about local content that Bwana Julius spoke about, there are still some gaps there. And Robert, it's clear we need a bag of cash. So even as you convene us in the Innovators Forum, as we make baby steps, how do we bring all these investors? How do we mobilize investment? In the interest of time, I'll switch to the next panelist. If you have any question for Mushai, I think it represents a very important body. If you're talking about local manufacturing, it'd be good for you to drop questions on the chat, but also we are happy to connect you with any of the panelists after the event. We can always do a quick email intro. So I'll go to the next one, which has been in the news quite a bit. You might have seen this company in the news in the recent past. We have the Director of Sales, Marketing and Product Development from Revital Health. A little bit about the panelist. His name is Ronik Vora. Ronik, as I said, heads Sales, Marketing and Product Development at Revital, which is one of Africa's sorry, there's a bit of background. Thank you. So as I was saying, Revital Health is one of Africa's largest manufacturers of single-use syringes, needles, which have an auto-disable function. They also make infusion sets, among many other products, and they supply East, Central, and West Africa, and even globally. They have production capacity of about 25 million units per month, and they've played an important role when you talk about fight against COVID. Yeah, they became they became actually the only one in Africa among 6 others globally to be WHO accredited to manufacture vaccine syringes. And they've done this in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to ensure that mass production. In addition to Revital, Ronik is also a seasoned business professional with experience in leading a number of organizations across Kenya. So Ronik, over to you.
Thank you, Wilfred. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the panelists as well as viewers. My name is Ronik Vora. I'm the Sales, Marketing and Product Development Director at Revital Healthcare. I'll start off by sharing my screen. Perfect. So let me start off. So what is Revital? Revital is actually founded in the year 2008 in Mombasa, Kenya. We're a state-of-the-art medical disposable manufacturer, actually one of a kind in Africa. We currently export to more than 21 countries in Africa, including Europe, South America, as well as Asia. Uh, what we see as a gap in Africa is a lack of medical industry such as ours. And what we noticed was, how can Revital make an impact in such a field? Since the introduction, we now manufacture more than 44 medical devices, and we currently employ over 500 people. We started off with just 60 people. We've increased over the years to expand to over 500 people, and we hire about 80% women. We've got several certifications, as Wilfred mentioned earlier. We've got WHO PQS for the auto-disable and reuse prevention syringes, which is funded in the year 2013 by the Bill and Melinda Foundation. So they gave us a grant to start manufacturing these auto-disable syringes, which has saved millions of lives every year, with the government of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Mozambique, Malawi, several governments within East to Central Africa buying these AD syringes. In addition to the WHO PQS, we've also got 3 ISOs. We've got ISO 13485, we've got ISO 9001, as well as 14001. We've also got CE, which means we can legally export to any country in Europe. And we're one of the only manufacturers, actually the only manufacturer in Africa to have received US FDA certification for the COVID test kits that we're manufacturing locally in Kenya. So that's a very brief overview of what Revital is. So as I mentioned earlier, and based on the map that you see, these are all the countries that we currently export to. Our latest countries being in Canada, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, where we're currently exporting vaccine syringes. All this time, every time we've heard about vaccine syringes, we've always noticed that these vaccine syringes are being imported into Africa from countries in China, India, and Europe. For the first time in history, not only for Revital, but for Africa and Kenya at large, we're exporting vaccine syringes to Europe, and specifically for COVID. Since the time we've started manufacturing, we've actually dispatched quite a few consignments to UNICEF, to WHO, to the government of Nigeria, as well as several countries in Europe as well. So these are some of the testimonials that we've got from our customers locally as well as internationally. You can briefly read through them and see how supportive a lot of these international organizations are to purchase from manufacturers in Africa. So COVID essentially has diverted a lot of these countries which were relying on India and China to procure these essential medical devices to now start looking at Africa as the next best source of receiving these medical devices. We have the qualifications, we have the expertise, we have the capabilities. Why not look into Africa? And that's one of the reasons why we've now, since COVID, been able to enter into Canada as well as Europe. So before my presentation, a couple of panelists highlighted the issue that we have in Africa. And the issue that we have is we're so reliant on Asia and Europe to get the medical devices. As you can see from this figure, we import more than 80% of the medical devices every year from these continents. Why not have a strong foundation in Africa and specifically in Kenya to make these medical devices locally? We have, as I mentioned, we have the capability, so why not? So what we did as a start of COVID last year, in March last year, we noticed that there's gap of a lot of focus. And when I sat down with my R&D team, we said, what can we do to impact and assist Kenya and assist the neighboring countries? In fact, since then, we've introduced several new items in our portfolio, some of them being the PPE kits that we manufacture, the gowns, coveralls, surgical face masks, and our couple of latest new products are the viral transport medium and the specimen collection swabs. So we've got a capacity of 80,000 test kits per day. We're currently seeing testing about 3,000 to 4,000. A lot of these test kits are currently being exported to countries in Tanzania, Uganda, Malawi, Mozambique, etc. We've also started a whole new line of RDTs, and we're actually the only manufacturer currently in Africa to be approved for antigen COVID test kits, rapid test kits. We just got our certifications done in the last 2 weeks ago. So we've hit the road and we've started to market on full scale on these rapid antigen test kits. Results in less than 20 minutes. So the gap that we notice, and based on the research that we have conducted in these past few years, is essentially three main communicable diseases, which is malaria, HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis. My main focal point currently right now is malaria, not only because we're in this field, in the medical field, but also because I'm part of the End Malaria Council and Fund, which is governed by Mutai Kagwe himself. The organization is aimed at ending malaria or eliminating malaria in Africa by the year 2030 by coming up with innovative ways of eradicating this deadly disease. So since then, we're looking into start manufacturing the RDTs for malaria, amongst other products as well. So as I mentioned earlier regarding the RDTs, there's a huge gap, and we've noticed this gap, and we as Revital are making sure that we fill this gap by coming up with a whole new line of RDTs. We're actually partnering up with a local organization in Kenya to extensively research as well as manufacture these various RDTs. It can be malaria, dengue, COVID, hepatitis, cancer, H. pylori, several RDTs. And Revital's goal is in the next 1.5 years to launch a whole new line of at least 15 new RDTs. So as Robert mentioned earlier on, there's a very big gap of medical devices currently imported in Africa. If you can see from this slide, just this one slide, from 2020 till 2025, the gap of expanding and increasing the product portfolio is 619 billion from $286 billion. This is a huge gap. In just syringes on its own, it's 16.8 billion currently in 2020, and it's projected to increase to $26.9 billion. We've seen this demand, we've noticed this demand based on the volumes and the inquiries that we're receiving from around the world. And since then, Revital is focused on expanding its product range to manufacture a lot more vaccine syringes, which are going to be used to vaccinate a lot of the population within Africa and beyond. So why Revital? Why Kenya? Why do customers prefer buying from us? There are quite a few number of advantages, not only because Revital is strategically located in Africa, specifically in Kenya. We've got the port next to us, we've got the airport just 1 hour away from the factory, and we've got a whole extensive road network. That's the reason why a lot of distributors and importers in Africa have diverted their purchases from China and India to now Revital Healthcare. We've seen an influx of the number of customers since the start of this year, and we've tied a few contracts as well with customers in Europe as well as Canada. Another few benefits is, of course, because of certifications that we hold, which is the various certifications I mentioned earlier. So we've actually entered into partnership with quite a few organizations since the start of COVID, one of them being BCG. I'll speak about Bayou in a bit because that's also associated with Bilgrow. But BCG and throughout the NEPAD has really emphasized and assisted us in streamlining our aim in terms of enlarging our product portfolio with the various RDTs that we want to manufacture. So they've greatly assisted us and nurtured us in this whole new line. Coming on to Bayou and Wilgrow. So last year, we were approached by a professor from the US, Professor Thomas Burke, who's come up with a very innovative product called the BCPAP. Now, what is a BCPAP? BCPAP is the full form of BCPAP is a bubble continuous positive airway pressure. Very long term, shorten it down, we call it the BCPAP. And what the BCPAP does is essentially provides right amount of oxygen to premature babies. Every year, more than 400,000 infants and neonates die because of premature and not having the right amount of oxygen. This product essentially saves and bridges this gap and eliminates this issue of babies dying just because of not having the right amount of oxygen. So with a patented technology, this professor identified Revital and specifically Revital in Kenya to manufacture this life-saving product. There are manufacturers in China, there are manufacturers in India who could also do the same thing, but why Revital? And one of the reasons why I highlighted is not only are we strategically based in Africa, but we are also problem-solving companies, which is eliminating a lot of issues that we find in Africa, which is killing a lot of people. So that's the reason why this professor approached us and was able to give us the licensing opportunity in association with Wilgrow Africa to produce this product. In fact, we've received a grant from this, and by the first week of July, we should have our prototypes up and running and be able to now sell to the rest of the world. So just that was a brief overview about Revital. I'll be open up for any questions, Wilfred.
Thank you. Don't mind, you can mute. Thank you. It's a bit of background. So I'll ask two questions so that we can move to the larger panel. So I'll limit it to two questions. One is around the bias, right? Africa has been known as a recipient, not as a producer. How are there challenges overcoming that bias, not just globally, but also even within the country, where we see a lot of people prefer imported? I mean, there's that perception that if it comes from Europe, it's better. If it comes from China, it's better. How are you overcoming this bias issue, mostly locally and then globally?
That's actually a very excellent question. So when we started off Revital in 2008, a lot of people told us, you're not going to be able to compete with China. You're not going to be able to compete with India with the prices and the quality that we have. 13 years down the road, we've proven to manufacturers in India and China both that we're capable of manufacturing high quality medical devices in Africa at affordable prices. In fact, that's our motto: high quality medical devices at affordable prices. Before we entered into the market, and I'll give you one example and one example only, the vaccine syringes that were manufactured by Revital. Before we entered into the market, the government of Kenya were procuring these vaccine syringes for $15 a box of 100 pieces. When we entered into the market, we dropped the price down to $6. $15 from Europe to $6. That's the amount of savings the government has earned. And this is just one product I'm talking about in the whole portfolio of products that we have. If you look at the amount of products that we manufacture, the amount of savings that the government can receive by just procuring from local entities. And I want to express this greatly because Ugandan government buys about 10 to 12 products. Tanzanian government buys about 10 to 12 products as well. The Kenyan government up till now has only procured about 2 different products that we manufacture. And what we want to insist is we want the support from the government. We want the support to expand our product range and ensure that we are self-reliant and independent from countries in China and India as well.
So what I'm hearing is, if you build, they'll come. That's what I'm hearing from you. The second question is on other innovators that, setting up a facility like that with all those certifications, it takes a while and it also takes a lot of investments. Borrowing from the story of Value, where you have had this collaboration with an inventor who has built a product and then licensing to you to manufacture, what would you tell other innovators, inventors on this call in terms of opportunity to partner with a manufacturing facility like yours? How is it an open door policy? How do you evaluate? Just expand a little bit about that opportunity.
Absolutely. That's actually a good question too. So I know there's a lot of young innovators creating cool new products in the medical field or in any other field right now, and they need an avenue to launch themselves. Revital is just one company in Kenya who is accepting proposals from anyone, whether it's not any field, but it has to be medical field related. But Vayu and Wilgrow is just one example we're doing a partnership with. We've got several other partnerships along the way right now, where within the next 1 or 2 years, we'll be able to launch these new products that we want to do. There's a couple of new companies in Kenya. Gearbox is one of them. Such a cool company. In fact, I got a chance to visit them and their facilities. Amazing institution and what they provide in terms of incubated programs for young innovators. That's one of the ways that young innovators can approach as well.
Thank you. I would like to welcome now the rest of the panelists back and to answer some of the questions that might have come. I don't know, Nick, if you have access to the questions.
Yes, I do. We had a question from Marianne. Shai has already beaten us to it by responding in the chat, but I think it's worth opening up to the rest of the panel. She says, great summarized presentation, highlighting room for strengthening regulatory frameworks and key networking as well. But how much linkage is there between local manufacturers and R&D from academia and research institutions, both public and private?
Yeah, so any panelists, please feel free to respond to that question.
I think I had started off, maybe I'll clarify a bit of what I was saying about language. I think one of the challenges we have, and I know Ronick will attest to that, is that when innovators meet industrialists, you may not be coming from the same space. And I think that's what organizations like Vilgro can help with, because the innovator is usually a scientist, somebody who's working in a lab or some sort of inventive space, but the company or whoever is trying to buy it is a capitalist, so to speak. It's just a businessman trying to work on different numbers, and so sometimes you need somebody to try and mediate that conversation. A lot of innovators think they have found the next thing since sliced bread, I think is the phrase people say. It's the next best invention since sliced bread. But the investor is always thinking about, will anybody buy this? What is the risk? What are the challenges around it? And how do I get paid back? So someone to negotiate that space can tend to be one of the big challenges that we have. And also matching expectations with what is possible.
Maybe if I could also just add on to that a little bit, and a lot of times when we talk of private sector and academia, we think private sector has to be these big companies, Philips, Becton Dickinson, GE. Value is literally a startup. It's Professor Thomas Burke with maybe 2 more people, and that's it. So sometimes we are looking for the big and we miss the small. And as I was saying, in many cases, starting small, you really can't escape it. But staying small to me is a crime, given the massive market opportunity and the capacity, as Ronick has really very eloquently put it together with Mushai. So how do we start small? How do you take your idea? How do you create a startup? And how do you partner with the intermediary organizations? And Vilgro, we are there, anything on medical devices and diagnostics. It's, as a scientist, that's my area of expertise. But also you get the benefit of, the other guys, Wilfred and all these MBA people, smart guys who know how to make money. So bottom line is, yes, you do need intermediary, but start small. Don't fear the small, don't ignore it. Everybody started small. Even GE was at one time just somebody in a lab.
Yeah, the other question, and I think this is for you, Robert, is the Innovators Forum having a pipeline of investable companies in healthcare space? Yeah, do you have a pipeline? I think this must have come from an interested investor in the room.
We have a growing pipeline, and I think Ronick has already just mentioned about a partnership we've done as Vilgro with Bio and Revital Health. And I think also there's an opportunity for investment in the device you just saw in Mushai's presentation. One of the things that he highlighted is that they need to go into clinical studies. It's going to require some money to do that. So I think there's lots of opportunity. And the other thing is to highlight again that we're not just trying to create a talk shop. We want to really build this community so that if you're on the Innovators Forum, you can check out on the Bob platform and just say, hey, who's looking for funding, or I'm an innovator, I don't understand how to do how to develop a clinical trial protocol. And members within that community are able to say, hey, I'm here, I can do that. Or maybe I'm stuck on, and I think Ronnie can tell you, getting ISO 13484, hey, it's not easy. WHO pre-qualification. QMS is just a whole other animal in itself. And we need to have the community that can bring together the consultants, the financiers, the practitioners, all of us in a way that we can easily find each other. So to me, the more we're able to leverage technology, and I think BOBAP is a good place to start. Just set up your small profile, say this is what I do, say this is what I'm looking for. And then the rest is, engage and let's see how we can make sure nothing gets stuck.
Thank you. Maybe one more question before we wrap up. This one goes to government. So this goes to Kerema. I think after the story of Kevevapi and other experiences of the question of delayed payments, right? If you supply, especially now going to county, it's even taking longer to get paid. Are you going to get paid? I think that's a concern. If you work with government, I mean, why work with government if the payment might take a year or more? Maybe you might want to address that in terms of initiatives in place to fast track this procurement process. Julius, are you still there? Yeah, it seems like we lost Julius.
You can...
While we're waiting for Julius to come back, we have had another question come in from Francisca, which is an interesting one, talking about the availability of subsidies being offered by government for local manufacturers. So perhaps beyond government as well, additional subsidies that can help support local manufacturing.
Yeah, I think that also would fall under Julius, but Mushai and any panelists, please, you can.
Yeah,
make some.
I think I can answer your first one as well about payments and so on, and that does go to the ease of doing business. And what I highlighted, that we work on trying to make a policy and practice environment that makes it easier for businesses to operate. Actually, just this week, the Competition Authority released what we call retail regulations. So those are some of the things we were very actively involved with in trying to make even payment, even in the private sector, to improve, where this was mostly around supermarkets and manufacturers and their suppliers. But it is a cultural thing that we need to work on and grow. I think even as Ronik was talking about the price that Kenya was paying for its syringes, and the fact that he's able to sell to other countries but not our own, does go to the big, the big elephant in our room in our country is still corruption. And we need to work on it as a country, find solutions that will work for us, because I think it's not a government issue. The people who supply or participate in it, it's a cultural issue. It is both public sector, private sector, even in the civil society sector, it's still an issue. So it's something we need to work on as a country and say we need more clean, open business. And things like IFMIS and other procurement systems like KEMSA has tried to implement, they do help by putting some light into these things and help move things forward. As far as subsidies go, we do have some programs like under the Kenya Industrial Estates, which is not quite a subsidy, but you're getting maybe some space, some room to do some innovation and so on, at low or no cost. But still, it is very minimum. And we find that it is actually driven towards low-tech innovations, not necessarily high-tech innovations, which is what you'd be looking at in some of these biomedical things. Well, some of it need not be very high-tech, but again, it's a bit more sophisticated than what is available. And of course, we've talked about, I think one of our sponsors here is Gearbox and other such incubators who are trying to put things together so that people can try these things. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge getting subsidies, and funding at the beginning, especially. We have been, like I said, also on the taxation front, we have been asking government that can we create some sort of tax holidays for the SMEs, for the people who are starting with innovations? They get a little bit longer tax holidays. But in fact, in Kenya, we've been going in the reverse. We used to have an investment deduction, which was 100%. In the first year, it's been reduced to 50%. We now had a minimum tax. Luckily, KAM and a couple of other bodies have gone to court and had it suspended for a while, but it looks like it will come back still. So, while the government is still keen on it, we're still going to fight about it. But so it's all those taxes that can help startups to be able to have a little bit of run on cash flow.
Thanks a lot. So I think one more question, and then we go to closing remarks. We are just at we have 9 minutes left to the end of the event. So there's a question here to Ronek, and maybe Ronek, as you answer this, you can also give your closing remarks right after. So the question is, what is the manufacturing capacity available for diagnostics at Revital Health? And for example, can you do lateral flow chromatography for rapid kits or molecular tests? Maybe speak a little bit to that capacity, and then also.
Thank you, Wilfred. So currently our capacity is edged at 500,000 kits per month. We're looking to expand this production to about 2 to 2.5 million units in the next 6 months per month. So per month, we're doing 500,000. In the next 6 months, we're looking to do about 2 million to 2.5 million units per month. And this is going to be a range of RDTs. So not only COVID antigen test kits, but we'll also, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at malaria, dengue, H. pylori, several other test kits. As part of my closing remarks, one of the fears that we have as local manufacturers is not the amount of support, is basically the right support from the government. As I mentioned, we manufacture 44 medical devices, but Kenyan government only procures 2 medical devices. That doesn't really show the focus and the strength in the government in emphasizing local manufacturing. There are subsidy programs. For example, when you bid for KEMSA, there's preferential procurement in terms of prices by 20%, but that doesn't essentially help factor in local manufacturing, essentially. You cannot always be 100% competitive with China and India. You have to take economies of scale into place. And due to these reasons, we need to look and focus on what is currently being manufactured in Kenya and work with the manufacturer on a personal basis. Hey, we need this product. We need it as ASAP tomorrow. What price can you afford to us? Payment terms, etc. We're, as Revital, we're willing to work with the government. We mentioned before, and I still mention on this platform as well, we're welcome to sit with the government one-on-one and come up with a program or an initiative, not only through Revital, but through all the other pharmaceutical manufacturers in Kenya and medical disposable manufacturers in Kenya. Why not procure from local manufacturers? You're creating employment, direct and indirect employment. You're spurring the economy, which is what we currently need right now. We're benefiting the country by bringing the name of Kenya into the limelight. Being one of the only manufacturers in Africa for various products puts Kenya in the limelight, and that attracts foreign investments from multinationals around the world. And as I mentioned earlier, competition is healthy. We want competition. We want competitors. We want to make sure that we can fight with the competitors to bring the prices of medical devices even lower than what it is right now. So within Kenya, within Africa, competition is definitely healthy, and just getting a collaboration, not only with Kenya, but even the neighboring countries as well, because that's one of the challenges that we see. We have to, when we enter a new country, we have to register our products. This takes anywhere between 3 to 6 months and thousands of dollars. As you mentioned earlier on, getting WHO PQS is not an easy job. We spend at least $400,000 a year in the various certifications that we have. This is just money going to certification. This money could be utilized to expand my product range to now manufacture 50 products or 55 products. If Africa can get together and say, open up open border policy where you do not need to register, bring your products in as long as it's manufactured in Africa, I guarantee you Africa would be the next continent where all these other continents are looking to procure from. Thank you so much, Wilfred.
Wow, that's a nice parting shot. I think what I'm hearing is harmonization of regulatory I'm also hearing streamlining procurement and having one-on-one with government, especially the agencies involved, the procurement entities involved, people like KEMSA and others. And I think that gives us a hint on who we should bring to the roundtable that Robert will be organizing. We can bring some of these people so that we have these candid conversations, right? It's not about bashing, but more of talking together and collaborating, and that's the spirit. The next person I'd like to invite on stage to give their closing remarks is Moshai Konyiha. Please, Moshai, welcome.
Okay, thanks, Wilfred, and thanks also to the Real Grow community and everyone who's out there. I think the need for us to be innovative is clear. And perhaps one I would just like to reemphasize is that the solutions we need, and I think I like what Ronique was saying, they want to focus on things like malaria. Because for Western big pharmaceutical companies, malaria may not be considered a big issue because it's not something that is affecting their societies. So we have our own societal problems that we can address and deal with. And so that need for innovation is important for us to do. And then now after that is to build the innovation infrastructure, because it's not just about having clever people like Dr. Karanja and so on who can come up with things. It's about what is what's the whole infrastructure around it. Again, like I said, the example of Revital is good. If they've taken 8 or 5 years to get all these approvals, similarly, we need all our regulators and so on to get the approvals so that we are building this infrastructure that is going to enable us to have a platform that we can innovate off in the future. The important thing, you may not have it today, the important thing is to start, so that we start on it and we build it, and we will have it in 8 years as we get there. And I think the people who are here, because of the jobs we need to create in our market, the industrialization that we are looking forward to, it is not, I would say, something optional for us. It is something we must engage our minds into as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And now I understand why you are the chairman of Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I think you're lobbying very well, and you have their interests at heart. And I think some of the attendees here should soon be able to join CAM when they start manufacturing. So Ronique, you help us to manufacture, and then Moshai helps us to join the same lobby group and continue advocating. Otherwise, the change will have to start with us, right? We can't wait for government. We have to be the change that we want to see. I'd like to check whether Julius has made it back and to give us his closing remarks. If not, I would like Robert to give his closing remarks, and then we bring the show to an end.
Thank you, Wilfred, and thank you, panelists. Thank you, our participants. I think this has been a joy to be a part of. And for me, I think I constantly keep saying, we need to venture. We need to take a bit of risk. And the way to deal with risk is to start small. You don't risk big time. You risk small time. So the startups are an incredible part of this process. And for those who are actually creating the solutions, the innovators, the inventors, being able to package it in a startup is a really next important step that you must take. And once you do that, you're up and running and you're ready for business. So my encouragement is, let's not just think private sector academia in terms of the big players. We love big players like Revital Health. But even the Revital Health started somewhere. And if you also give the story of how they started, you'd be thinking, wow, actually that is accessible. We do that. And with time, we get better and we become well built with Revital Health. And I believe we can be able to create so much more in terms of those success stories. So I'm looking forward to our continued conversation and engagement as members of this Innovators Forum community. We really would love to, if we were to have another session like this in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, start seeing a growing membership within the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. So, Mushai, I am building your pipeline of membership. and I'd love to, so I consider you the big leagues. As we grow, as we mature, we find ourselves now seated with the in that bigger club. But let's, this is execute the immediate steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. I think we are at the top of the hour. It's amazing how fast the 1.5 hours has gone by. And these were very rich discussions. We've seen people are there doing it. We're not just talking. We've heard from Ronik himself. And today I hear there will be something on the news about the shipment from Revital that is going to Europe. So please tune in. And when you watch the news, you say, oh, I was with him in the panel. I was with him in the webinar. So and tag him on the social media. Same with Mushai and Julius. Let's continue taking the conversation offline, or rather online, on our social media, or Twitter handles, and different channels. And as Robert said, this is the first of the many to come. So we'll keep growing and hope to see the same people that participated today. We hope to see them in the next one, and even in the round tables. So mine is to thank you all for your participation and to bring this show to an end. Thank you. And